We're up to the Mishnah Daf Yudalad Amud Aleph. So today's daf, it's not a complicated daf. It's just one long cheshbon. It's one long thought. I think it's a long thought that continues into tomorrow's daf and tomorrow's daf as well. The Mishnah says a chiddush. Hashoichet b'Shabbos b'Yom Kippurim. If you shecht an animal on Shabbos or Yom Kippur, so obviously that is chayiv misa or chayiv karis for Yom Kippur. It's a very big avera, but Afal Pishim is chayiv b'nafshay, even though you're going to get the death penalty, shchitasik sheira. The animal's still kosher. Now, by the way, Taisus says akasha. I thought if you're mechal Shabbos, then you can't shecht. The answer is you did this privately, or this is the first time you're doing it, so you don't have the status of mechal Shabbos. Bekitzer, or put that aside. But the point is, even though it's your chayiv the misa, it's going to be a good shchita. Meaning the shchita is kosher. Fine, so you can eat the food. Obviously, we're not talking about a case where you're shechting for a chayla. We're talking about your mechal Shabbos. Fine. Here's the chiddush of the Mishnah of the Gemara, and this is going to take us throughout today's daf and tomorrow's daf. Amar Rav Huna, Darush Chia Bar Rav Mishmei Derav, Asura Ba'achila Liyoma. Even though the meat can be eaten, you cannot eat it on Shabbos. There's a problem of eating the meat on Shabbos. Now, why? Pashas, the Gemara is going with the presumption it's a muksa issue, meaning you're right, the food is kosher. The shchita is a good shchita. But on Shabbos, it's muksa. And by the way, I think it would be muksa. I think Pasha, we would assume muksa. Muksa is defined by practical terms, is defined by something that you did not go into Shabbos anticipating its usage. Obviously, when you go into Shabbos with a living animal, you don't anticipate eating it. So, Pashtus, it's muksa. So says Rav, it's muksa. It's a problem, you can't eat it on Shabbos, Pashtus because of muksa. So the question is, who is the author? Where did Rav get this from? Which Tana is the one who established that this case is a muksa issue? This Nazbin Chavrayu L'meimar, so Rav's friends said, Rav Yehuda, it follows the Shita of Rav Yehuda. Now, Rav Yehuda in general, throughout Hilchas Muksa, is more strict than Rav Shimon, but the issue what we're going to have with in today's daf, so that's, by the way, that's today and tomorrow's daf. Where is this Rav Yehuda? Rav Yehuda is this magical shita that the meat that you shechted on Shabbos will be muksa. Now the issue is, Rav Yehuda never directly addressed this case. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to find a shita of Rav Yehuda regarding muksa and apply it to this case. Because Rav Yehuda never addressed a case where you shecht, Menashe takes an animal, shechts it on Shabbos, the fact that the animal is muksa, Rav Yehuda never addressed that case directly. So we're saying, according to Rav Yehuda, it's muksa. What we're going to have to find, I think, is 4 mahalchim in today's daf to try to find this Rav Yehuda. Hi, Rav Yehuda. So says the Gemara, where is this Rav Yehuda that this animal is muksa? So the Gemara attempts number 1. I'll say it outside and then we'll see it inside. Attempt number 1 is Rav Abba. Rav Abba says, I'll tell you how. If let's say I have an animal that's a live animal, I shecht it on Shabbos, that's what we're looking for. Is it muksa? Rav Yehuda never addressed that case, but you know what Rav Yehuda did say? What if on Shabbos a live animal gets a heart attack, drops dead? Can I feed it to my dogs? It's an avela, I can't eat it. Can I feed it to my dogs? Rav Yehuda says no. It's muksa. Oh, so what do you see? You see that because it started off Shabbos, right now it's dog food, right? A dead animal is dog food. So right now you should say, it's dog food, so why can't I feed it to the dogs? So says Rav Yehuda, it's a problem. Why? Because when it started Shabbos, it wasn't dog food. It started Shabbos, it was a living animal. So says Rav Abba, if Rav Yehuda felt that a live animal that dies is muksa for dogs, so a live animal that shechted is muksa for people. That's the svara of Rav Abba. That's where he feels is the source. And the Gemara then will discuss whether that's a legitimate source. So let's see it inside. Rav Abba, Rav Yehuda the Hachanihi. It's Rav Yehuda when it comes to muksa. Where is this Rav Yehuda the Tanan? The Mishnah says, halacha number 1 is not related to muksa, and that is mechatchenes adulum lufnei behema. You could take up gourds and cut them up for animals. This is, Rashi says, has nothing to do with muksa. This is just, they're not muksa gourds. The question is, are you allowed to cut them up for animals, or is it considered unnecessary exertion because animals can really eat it on their own? Says the Gemara, you're allowed to because it makes it easier for them. So that's not an unnecessary exertion on Shabbos. Let's put that aside. The next case. Es hanavel ufnei haklavim. The Tanna Kama says that if you have a live animal that drops dead on Shabbos, you could feed it to the dogs. When it started off Shabbos, it was alive, so it wasn't dog food. Yeah, but right now it's dog food. The Tanna Kama says, I look at the way it is right now. If right now it's dog food, it's not muksa, feed it to the dogs. Comes Rav Yehuda, and Rav Yehuda says, Im lo yihaisa nevelo me'erev Shabbos asura. If it was dog food before Shabbos, that's fine. But if it was alive when Shabbos began, and then it gets a heart attack and drops dead, you can't feed it to a dog. It's muksa. That's Rabbi Yehuda's shita. So a live animal that drops dead is muksa for dogs. So the Gemara says, Lefi she'enim and amuchan, because when Shabbos began, when Shabbos started, did you think this was going to be dog food? No, it was walking around in the backyard. So when Shabbos began, it was not prepared to be dog food, so it's muksa. Even though right now it is dog food, huh? Well, noilid is a type of muksa. It is. Noilid is a form of muksa. You're right. I wouldn't. The Gemara is going to discuss later on whether it's full noilid. You could argue that the reason why it's not noilid, the Gemara is going to say later on, is that because noilid applies when something new is created. This is the same animal. It's just life force is removed. The only thing that's new is my ability to eat it. Review the Gemara actually going to say later on. It's a good point. The Gemara is going to point out that it's not noilid according to review. But you should also know that noilid is a subcategory of muksa. So it says the Gemara, Kivan deloy itchen me'etmal, because the animal was alive and it was not prepared as dog food when Shabbos began, asura, it's muksa, even though right now it is dog food, because we set, muksa is always set by the status when Shabbos begins. Migud iskatsoi bin ashmashis iskatskoi kuli yoima, which means you look at the way its status when Shabbos began. When Shabbos began, it wasn't dog food, so it's also the whole Shabbos. So hachanami, so we could extrapolate. So too over here, when I have a living animal that I shecht, when it started Shabbos, it was not people food; it was alive. So too, it's muksa. Hachanami kiven d'layitchan me'etmal asura. So comes Rav Abba. This is the source of Rav Yehuda. Beautiful. Abaye says, I don't think that's true. Abaye says, I look at it differently. Just because Rabbi Yehuda said that a living animal that dies is muksa for dog food does not mean a living animal that I shecht is muksa. Why? Because he looks at it like this. A living animal, what is it set for? What are you going to use it for? You're going to eat it at some point. So it's really, when it's alive, it's meant down the line for people. When it gets a heart attack and dies, it's now only for dogs. It was for people. Now it's for dogs. That's muksa. But when you have a living animal, which ultimately, if I'd say, well, what is it going to be used for? It's going to be eaten. So it's really meant for people. And then I shecht it, it's now used for people. So Abaye says, I don't know, why is that muksa? A living animal that gets a heart attack for dogs, the reason why it's muksa is because when it was alive, I was going to eat it eventually. But now it's only meant for dogs. So it goes from person to dog. That's a change. That's muksa. But when it was alive and then I shecht it, it was originally going to be eventually for people. So now it's for people to people, not muksa. That's about correct. So the Gemara is going to counter, and Rav Abba is going to counter, a living animal is not meant to be eaten. A living animal, I mean, maybe down the line. Adarabba, I actually think that a living animal is actually meant to breed. The Gemara says that statistically they would use living animals to breed more, I guess, depending on what animal. Correct. So, meaning he's looking at that every living animal is really meant for people, because eventually you're going to eat it. So then, if it gets a heart attack, it's muksa because it was for people and now it's for animals. People to dog is muksa. But if it was originally for people, then I shecht it, so it was potentially for people, and now it's practically for people. People to people is not muksa. That's the Gemara's counter. Amrle Abaya midami hasa meikara muchal adam. Over there, before it was, when it was alive, it was meant eventually to be prepared for human consumption down the line. But now that it had a heart attack and it's a nevela, it's only able to be eaten by dogs. That's a change that's considered muksa, because it was for people, and then the change happens, and now it's for dogs. So it wasn't, beginning of Shabbos, it wasn't meant for dogs. But when it comes to a cow, meikaro, let's say whatever, a lamb, whatever it is, a sheep. The point is, originally it was going to be for people. When it's alive, it was eventually going to be eaten for people. Muchal adam. And now when I shechted it, muchal adam. Now it's definitely for people. People to people is not muksa. That's Abaye's counter. Because Abaye looks at a living animal as eventual food. So when Shabbos begins by a living animal, when you see a living animal walking around, you say, that's going to be food. Says the Gemara, Mi savar behema b'chayel achila medes. You're assuming that an animal when it's alive is designated for consumption? Behema b'chayel gadol medes. When it's alive, it's meant for whatever it's meant for. Breeding, work in the field, cow will be for milk. Meaning it's not meant for eating. It's meant for whatever function that animals do. Which, by the way, is why living animals are muksa, because they're not meant for food. They're meant for whatever avodah is done in the field, and those avodas are not allowed to be done on Shabbos. So you're looking at an animal when it's alive as eventual dog food, human food. I don't look at it that way. So according to Rav Abba, every animal is muksa, right? And then when you shech the animal, it's Vaita Muksa, because when Shabbos began, it wasn't when Shabbos began, it was not meant for food. It was meant for avoda or whatever it is. And then when you shecht it, that's not what it was used for. So it's a problem of Muksa on Shabbos. That's Rabbi. Let me ask you a question though. Again, according to Abaya, he only looks at it, it's only Muksa when it drops dead, because now it's going from people to dog. People to people is fine. But let's go with Rav Abba. I think it's more Pashut shot. When Shabbos begins, that animal that's walking around the field it's not meant for food right now. I don't know. Whatever. I'm gonna, breed it, whatever you're gonna do with it. Fine. Then when you shecht it, it's Muksa. Let me ask you a question. So how do you shecht the behema on Yom Tov? Yom Tov, you're definitely allowed to shecht the behema. L'kuli am l'chol deis. It's allowed to be shechted. Now let me ask you a question. So what? Oichel nefesh is just matter isurim of Yom Tov, but it doesn't remove muksa. Muksa is still a thing on Yom Tov. According to Abaya, every animal is meant for people, and then when you shecht it, it's weiter for people, so it's not really a muksa issue. Rav Abba is the one who says that animals are not meant for consumption down the line. They're really meant for breeding or for work, whatever it is. So when you shecht it, it's a muksa issue. That's Rav Abba saying. So how do you shecht an animal on Yom Tov? When Yom Tov began, it was not meant for consumption. It was meant for breeding or whatever it is. Then when you shecht it, you've now changed it for consumption. That change should be a muksa issue. Why are you allowed to shecht an animal on Yom Tov? Right, Shabbos, you say it's a problem. Why? Because when the Shabbos began, it wasn't meant for consumption. It was meant for breeding. And then when you shecht it, it wasn't prepared for food. So Yom Tov also.
No, on Yom Tov you're prepared to eat.
Yeah, but who said? So the Gemara wants to say like this. The Gemara is sort of touching on you saying. The Gemara said like this. Every animal really has multiple uses. It could be used for food. It could be used for breeding or whatever down the line. When Shabbos comes, when you begin Shabbos, when you're thinking about this animal, what do you think this animal is going to be used for on Shabbos? Obviously not food. You can't shecht it on Shabbos. The only thing else is breeding. You'll let it, live like a behemoth in the backyard. But Yom Tif, when Yom Tif begins, you have multiple choices. It could be used for breeding, or it could be used for consumption, because Yom Tov you're allowed to shecht. When you shecht, yesh breira. This is the concept of breira throughout Shas, which is it's retroactively, meaning it's sort of, when Yom Tov begins, there's two options that's floating over the animal of what this animal is going to be used for, either breeding or consumption, because you don't shecht every animal that you have in your backyard. The second you shecht it, then retroactively, it's huvrar limafreya, that it's retroactive dedication, that when Yom Tov begins, you really had in mind for food.
Yeah, but it's another issue, the issue of muksa.
No, I'm saying this is to avoid the muksa issue. This is to remove the muksa issue on Yom Tov. To remove the muksa issue on Yom Tov, if you say breira, then it'll remove the muksa issue, because then we say retroactively, when Yom Tov began, I was going to eat this animal. You only decided you're going to choose that animal in middle of Yom Tov. Retroactively, that's what you had in mind.
So in other words, you have to decide on that animal. If you decide, if it's
No.
animal.
No. You don't have to decide before Yom Tov. If you decide before Yom Tov, there's no shaila. His point is that even if you decide on Yom Tov, then it's retroactively, breira means retroactive rededication, that it's retroactively, that it's presumed that you had in mind for consumption when Yom Tov begins. So the reason why it's not a muksa issue on Yom Tov is because of breira. That's what we're saying. The issue we're going to have, and this is how we're going to reject it, is Rabbi Yehuda doesn't believe in breira. Breira again means that I'm basically going to do an act. It doesn't have to be muksa. It's just the concept of throughout Shas is you do an act, and then you do an act at the end which retroactively mivarer. It retroactively shows what the mentality was earlier. Rav Yehuda doesn't believe in breira. So you're saying the reason why it's not muksa on Yom Tov, according to Rav Yehuda, is because of breira. Rav Yehuda doesn't believe in breira. That's an issue. Yeah, it's a concept. It's a concept that Rav Yehuda does not accept. No, it's a concept. It's not based on a pasuk. It's a concept halachically. It's a halachic principle that Rav Yehuda does not believe in. So it says the Gemara, Amar loy oimedes la'achila uoimedes legadol. On the onset of Yom Tif, every living animal has multiple options. You could use it for breeding, or you could shecht it on Yom Tif. Nishchita, when you shecht it on Yom Tif, then huvra d'achila oimedes. Then it's retroactive that it's your concept going into Yom Tif. It's retroactive that the das going into Yom Tif, we look as if you had das meferish when Yom Tif began that you're going to eat it. Loy nishchata, but if you ultimately do not slaughter on Yom Tov, over to legadolei medes, then it's retroactively clear that you did not intend to eat it. So what your act on Yom Tov will retroactively redefine your thought process when Yom Tov began. That's why when you shecht an animal Yom Tov, it's not muksa because of breira. Here's the issue. Rabbi Yehuda does not believe in breira. So says the Gemara, halesle Rabbi Yehuda breira. Rabbi Yehuda does not believe in breira. Now, once we prove that Rabbi Yehuda does not believe in breira, we're going to restart our discussion as to which is the Rabbi Yehuda of our Mishnah. But let's just prove, how do we know that Rabbi Yehuda does not believe in breira? So the Gemara attempts with attempt number one. Now, this is a classic breira case. The case, basically, I'll say it outside, I'll say it inside, it basically is like this. I go to someone who did not separate Trumas and Maisers. He has a bottle of wine. Now, what I should do is I should take the bottle of wine, I should take multiple cups. I'll pour off Truma, I'll pour off Meiser. That's what I should do, and just pour them off and then hand the cups to the Kohen, to the Levi. I don't have cups. So here's what I do. I drink, I say before I start drinking, I'm like, okay, 10% is Meiser, 2% Truma, 10% Meiser, a tenth of that 10% is Meiser Sheni. I do all that, but I don't separate it because I don't have a cup. I keep drinking. Then when I get to the bottom, I stop. Then later on, when I get the cups, I can pour it off. Why? How are you drinking before you separate? The answer is yesh breira. So when I drink retroactively at the end, when I pour off to the kayin, it's clear that what I drank was not trumas and maisers. If I'm allowed to do this, it's because of breira. The issue is Rabbi Yehuda does not permit this process. Rabbi Yehuda does not permit this solution by this bottle of wine case. No, true, but the point is he doesn't believe in it, and the Gemara assumes the reason why he doesn't believe in it is because he doesn't believe in breira. There are other reasons why he may not believe in it, as the Gemara points out. The Gemara says, how do I know that Rabbi Yehuda does not believe in breira? So you buy wine from a kuti who did not separate trumas and maisers, so you really should pour it off, but you don't have any other cups. So Omer, you say it like this. You take the bottle of wine, you say, Shnei lugin shani yasi lahafrish, I'm eventually going to separate 2 lug of Truma, Harin Truma. And then you say Asara Meiser Rishon. Then you say 10% of the bottle is Meiser Rishon. And Tisha Meiser Sheni. And then a 10% of that 10% is Meiser Sheni. Umeichal, by the way, Meiser Sheni you could fix right now, which is you transfer the holiness onto cash, because Meiser Sheni is transferred onto cash. Fine. You keep drinking. So now you have this bottle of wine that's got Truma and Meiser mixed in. Now, how are you allowed to put a sip into your mouth? The answer is, Shaisa, you drink. Miyad. Why? Because breira. When you eventually pour off the trumas and maisers, then breira tells you that what you drink was not trumas and maisers. Divrei Rav Meir. Rav Meir clearly believes in breira. But what does the Brisa then say? Rav Yehuda, Rav Yosi, Rav Shimon, Oisrim. Rav Yehuda does not permit this solution. Why not? Because Rav Yehuda does not believe in breira. Go to the next page. That's the question. Correct, that's the question. You said he believes in breira. He does not believe in breira. How do I know he doesn't believe in breira? Because if he believes in breira, why is he not offering this solution? So you know what the Gemara says? Well, wait a minute. Maybe he does believe in breira. Well, if he believes in breira, why not do the solution? I'll tell you why. You want to know why this solution is not a good idea? Forget about breira. It's a risk. I'm walking with this bottle of wine. I've said that 2% is truma, 10% is meiser. I haven't poured it off yet. And I'm sipping. And breira at the end, don't worry. What happens if I drop the bottle? What if I drop the bottle and it shatters on Main Street? You know what happens? I drink without separating trumas and maisers. The only heter of breira is if you end up doing it. Right? When you ultimately give it to the kohen and to the Levi, then breira tells you that what you drink was not tevel. What if I drop it on the floor before I give it to the kohen and Levi? Breira is not magic. Breira just means that at the end, when you give it to them, then retroactively, you fixed it. But what if you don't end up giving it to them? Big problem. So Rabbi Yehuda says Aser, not because he doesn't believe in breira. Conceptually, he believes in breira. He just thinks this is a really stupid choice. Because if you drop the bottle of wine on Main Street before you ultimately give it to the Kohen and Levi, then breira is not going to help you. And now you just did a big avera. So says the Gemara, the Gemara responds, no, Rabbi Yehuda does believe in breira. So why is he against this solution of Rav Meir? They said their issue with it. They said to Rav Meir, our problem is, what happens if you drop the bottle? So you know what Rav Meir says? I'm a half full kind of guy. Rav Meir responds, Rav Meir says, why are we so worried it's going to break? When it breaks, we'll deal with it. Meaning, I'm not so concerned. Rav Yehuda is more concerned. Whatever. Point is, Rav Yehuda was taka concerned. So really, it could be Rav Yehuda believes in Breira. Conceptually, he's just practically against this solution because he said, what if you drop the bottle? So how do you know that Rav Yehuda does not believe in Breira? So the Gemara says, fine, good point. I'll give you a different source. The other source is just clear as day. Basically, it's like this. The concept of Erev Tchumen is that if you set up your Erev in a certain location, let's say you're in the desert, right? You get 2,000 amas in each direction of your Tchum. Where does the 2,000 amas begin? Where's the center point? Where you set up your food. Now, obviously, in a city, your city is your Tchum. But let's say I go outside of the city. I could extend the city limits by putting my food somewhere, and then I get 2,000 amas in that direction. Here's the situation. The situation is that there's a rabbi coming to near town. He's going to give a shir. Big shir, Rabbi Friend is coming. He's going to give a big shir. On Shabbos, he's giving the shir. They don't know where he's going to be, though. He could be in the east, or he could be in the west. So what I want to do is basically, I want to be able to go to the shir, but I need my tchum solution. But the problem is I don't know where he's going to be. You know what the Gemara says? So the Tanakama said, here's what you do. You set up an Erev over there. You set up an Erev over there. And whichever direction he comes, Breira tells you that's where your Erev was. Meaning, you can only really have one Erev, because Erev means where I'm living. But here's what you do. You take bread, put in the east of town. You take bread, put in the west of town. And basically say, when I find out which direction he comes in, right, he's coming on Shabbos. He's coming to one of these locations. When he comes in, they say, hey, you heard Rabbi Friend? I said, where is he? He's the east side. All right, east side. Breira. You can't have two Erevin. Erev means where I'm living. I can't live in two locations. By definition, it doesn't work. Erev means I'm setting up my food. This is where I am for Shabbos. By definition, you can't have two. You have to choose. Generally, you make a choice. Over here, I'm putting an evil location, and I'm saying when he comes in, Breira tells me that that's the direction. You know who's against this concept? Rabbi Yehuda. There you go. So Rabbi Yehuda is against Breira. So that's what the Gemara says. Yep. So the Gemara says, Elamid Detani Ayoy. Detani Ayoy. Ayoy says the following brayso. What does Ayoy say? Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Ein adam masnal shei dvarim ke'echad. Rabbi Yehuda says you can't set up an Erev in the east town and the west side of town and make a choice. El im bachacham memizrach l'mayriv eruve erev l'mayriv eruve erev l'kanal kanloy. Rabbi Yehuda says you can't put it in both locations. You got to pick a location. Now the Gemara just clarifies. What do you mean pick a location? Says the Gemara, Havina ba ma'ishal kanal kanloy. Why can't I put it in both locations and say whichever direction he comes in, Breira tells me it's fine because ein Breira. So mizrach u'mayriv nami ein Breira. Rav Yechonu ukvar ba'hachacham. The case is like this. The only time Rabbi Yehuda is cool with it is if I set up the Erev in either location and he's already here. I just didn't get the word yet. You see, if he's already here, it's not coming on Shabbos, then it's not relying on Breira. Breira means that on Shabbos, he's already here, I just don't know where he is. So I put up the Erev in the east side, I put up Erev in the west side, and I say, I want to live wherever the Rav is currently right here. If he's already in one of these locations, that's not Breira. That's the Metzias. Breira means that on Shabbos, something happens that retroactively redefines what happened Erev Shabbos. See, if he's traveling on Shabbos, I can't put him on the east side before Shabbos, the west side before Shabbos, and say whichever direction he comes on Shabbos, retroactively, that's what I choose. You can't do that. The only time Rabbi Yehuda is cool with it, because he doesn't believe in Breira, the only time Rabbi Yehuda is cool with it is if he's already here. I just don't know where he is because he's in the bathroom somewhere. I don't know where he is. Said you can put it on the east side, you can put it on the west side. I say wherever he is, I want it right now. It's not Breira. It's right now. It's Metzias. Right now, you could do that. That's not Breira. The point of this sugya is Rabbi Yehuda is against putting in either location and then on Shabbos having Breira define which location it was retroactively. Because Rabbi Yehuda does not believe in Breira. If Rabbi Yehuda does not believe in Breira, then you can't say that the reason why you're allowed to shecht an animal on Yom Tif is because of Breira. He doesn't believe in that. So we're going to go back to the original Mahalach, which is, we're back to the original problem. Our Mishnah said that if I shecht an animal on Shabbos, although the shechit is good, the animal is muksa. Who is the author of this? Rabbi Yehuda. Which Rabbi Yehuda? So we're going to go back to brainstorming. We're looking for a Rabbi Yehuda that's strict by muksa, bekitzer. That would tell you that if you shecht an animal, it's muksa. So says the Gemara, El Am Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda de Kalim. It's Rabbi Yehuda of Kalim. Now, where is this Rabbi Yehuda of Kalim? It's very simple. And that is, if I have a kli when Shabbos begins that breaks on Shabbos, it breaks. So I have a bowl that I drop on Shabbos and it shatters. Can I touch the shattered pieces? Not to clean up because I'm afraid someone's going to get hurt. Are the shattered pieces muksa? You know what Rabbi Yehuda says? The Tana Kama says, as long as they have some functionality. Let's say originally the bowl was a bowl, and now it could be used as a corkscrew. Okay, it's not the same kli, but it's a kli, you're fine. Rabbi Yehuda says, no. That's a change. That's muksa. It has to still function as the original functionality, meaning the shards have to still have the original function. If the original function was a cup, it has to function as a cup. If the original function was a bowl, it has to function as a bowl. Going from a bowl to a cup or a cup to a bowl, whatever these things, that's a change, muksa. So to over here, dead animal, living animal to dead animal, change, muksa. That's the Gemara's presumption. So says the Gemara, Elam Rav Yosef, Rav Yehuda dekelim he detanan. Kol hakelim nitalim b'Shabbos. You have a kli shvirasan nitalin. If the kli breaks on Shabbos, you could touch the shards. Uvacha oisin me'ein malacha. As long as they still have a function, not the original function, any function. An example, shiver areva. You have a bowl that breaks, but the pieces cannot be used as a bowl, but they could be used lachas b'chavis. They could be used as a bottle cap. So it's a functionality. It's fine. Shiver is chuchis l'chasm pigapach. That's the Tanakama sheet. It comes Rav Yehuda says no. If it was a bowl and now it's a bottle cap, no good. Rav Yehuda says avacha oisin me'ein malachton. They have to do their original functionality. You can't go from kli to kli. That's muksa. That's a change. Says the Gemara, Shivrei Arev mikvah. If you have a mixing bowl, it still has to be used to be a mixing bowl. Shivrei chuchas lotzim l'shemen. If you had a glass, it still has to function as a glass. Meaning, going from one kli to the next is no good. It has to serve the original functionality.
It's a different size?
Yeah, it'll just be a different size. It has to serve the original functionality. So what do you see from here? Let's say originally it was a bowl and now it's a spoon. Whatever. It's a different functionality. No good. That's a change. Muksa. So to over here, you had a living animal, and now it's a dead animal. Change, muksa. It's not the same case, but the Gemara assumes the same halachot would apply. The Gemara says, Me'in malach dinin, me'in malach acheres. Lo? Why? Alma kivendol itchan me'et malach malacha. You see that originally it was not meant for this function, and it changed. It's a problem. Asiri, it's muksa. Hachanam, you saw it over here. Originally, when Shabbos began, it was a living animal. Now it's a dead animal, because you shechted it. Therefore, asura. So we'll finish up in 2-3 minutes. The Gemara says lav dafka. It's not a good raya. I'll tell you why. You could argue that the reason why it's a problem when it comes to the kli is because when you change kalim, that's a real change. Originally, it was a bowl, and then it's a spoon. That's a massive change. That's muksa. Over here, it's the same animal. Originally, it was alive, and now it's dead. It's the exact same animal. What changed? My accessibility of eating. That's what changed. Nothing changed. The animal is the exact same animal. It's not like it's going from bowl to spoon. That's a change. This, it's a living animal, it's a dead animal. It's the exact same thing. What you're able to quantify is the soul that left it. What does that mean practically? I can now access it. Food, nah. Such a change is fine. I'll prove it to you. You know what Rabbi Yehuda Shita is? If I have an orange, you're not allowed to squeeze an orange on Shabbos. That's schita. But let's say I have an orange, and I cut it up, and liquid oozes out. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you could drink the liquid. Why? Originally it was a solid, and now it's a liquid. It's a change. The answer is, So over here, living animal, dead animal, not a change. That's what the Gemara argues. So the Gemara says, because when it comes to food, what's a big change? It's the same animal, it's just accessibility. The Gemara feels that that's not much of a change. It's not changing Caleb. So the Gemara says, over there, the reason why it's a change, because it's originally Kli A, and now it's a different type of Kli. That's a change. Havali Noilid, that's Noilid. Noilid means something new came up here, right? This spoon was originally a bowl. So it being a spoon is Noilid. That's something new. Noilid is a form of muksa, v'aser. But hacha, but over here, the living animal, dead animal, hacha meikara uchla, originally it was a food. Soif uchel, eventually it's food. Uchel differsu, it's just food that now has accessibility. So, it's all the same. It's not a Shamil or Rabbi Yehuda, uchel differ shaperdami. I think Rabbi Yehuda will be lenient in such a case. It's not muksa. Where did Rabbi Yehuda address such a case? Now, he never addressed the case of a living animal to a dead animal, but what he did say is the case of the orange. The Gemara says to Tanan, Ein soichten es aperes loitzim and shemet. Mashkin. You're not allowed to squeeze fruits on Shabbos. It's one of the lamates malachas. It's I mean, it's a malach of dash. It's included in dash. It's a tolda of dash. It's schita. So you're not allowed to squeeze out fruits on Shabbos. And by the way, even if they ooze on their own, it's a problem because we're afraid lest you come to squeeze. Comes the Rabbi Yehuda says, Im lo eichlin, if you're intending to eat the orange, meaning, if you're intending to squeeze the orange into liquids and then some of it oozes out, then it's a concern that you're going to squeeze it. But if you're intending to eat oranges to serve it to a guest as orange slices, and a little bit of orange juice comes out, that's fine. I'm not concerned, then it's fine. It was originally liquid in an orange and now it's liquid, so why isn't that not muksa? The answer is, food to food, it's fine. Says the Gemara, so you see that it's not a muksa issue. The Gemara says, I actually have one more quick point. Why is it that you're not allowed to drink liquids? Let's say I plan on squeezing an orange into orange juice. Some of the orange juice comes out on its own. You can't drink that. Why? Because we're afraid you'll squeeze it out. So I should actually argue, the Gemara says, you just made a good point. I think it's a problem to eat the shchita of an animal that you shechted on Shabbos, not because of muksa, but a gzeira. This is a new type of muksa. This is called muksa machmas iser, which is there are certain types of muksas that we don't allow you to do it because we're afraid you'll do an avera. Think about over here. If some liquid comes out, you're not allowed to drink the liquid. Why? Because we're afraid if you drink the liquid, you'll come to squeeze. So we should make the exact same gzeira. If we allow you to eat meat that you shechted on Shabbos, you know what people are going to start doing? Shechting on Shabbos. So that same argument that you made, that you brought up, agav, about this Mishnah, I actually think should be a source. It's a new type of muksa called muksa machmas iser, which is it's a muksa due to a fear that you'll actually do a prohibition. It's called muksa machmas iser. It's not very common because most muksas are not because of this. Most muksas are just that kli is not used. But this is called muksa machmas iser. So, meaning it's sort of included. I guess it's all included in that one gezerah. So the Gemara says, "Lav itmar lo Rav Yehuda Meshruel, Moidar Rav Yehuda lechachamim besali zeisam anavim." But didn't Rav Yehuda say that when it comes to olives and grapes, which juice is mamish, is very common to juice these fruits, that if the juice comes out, it's a problem. Why? Kivin del schita chaimi, because most people designated for pressing yohiv daite were afraid that if you drink the liquid, you'll come to squeeze it out. So it's muksa machmas iser hachanami. So to over here. Kivan de l'shchita kaima, because animals are meant to be shechted eventually. If we allow you to shecht it, meaning if you're not allowed to shecht it, if we allow you to eat the meat, you'll come to shecht it on your own. So the same way Rabbi Yehuda asers with grapes and olives, he should aser with shchita as well. So the Gemara says, "Midu taimel Rav, Hamer Rav Chala Kaya Rabbi Yehuda afilu b'sali zeisam anam." The Gemara says, "Well, Rav himself, 2 more minutes. Rav himself said that when it comes to grapes and olives, Rabbi Yehuda is lenient. So Rav doesn't necessarily agree with this muksa machmas iser creation. You're assuming that muksa machmas iser is a thing that we don't allow you to touch something because we're afraid that you'll do the avera. It's from the liquid that comes out of olives and grapes. Rav actually would hold that liquid coming out of olives and grapes is fine. But the Gemara just says one last attempt of Rav Yehuda. Again, where does Rav Yehuda see that there's an issue? If I shecht an animal, how do I know the animal is muksa? So the Gemara says, Rav Sheshes Bereder Rav Idi, Rav Yehuda de Neresi. It's Rav Yehuda from lamps. What's the case of lamps? The case of lamps is that if I light a earthenware lamp and the light goes out, I can't touch the earthenware lamp. Why? Because earthenware lamps were gross. After they were used once, they would get soot and sticky, and they were gross. It's called muksa machmas miyas. If Rav Yehuda believes that it's a problem because of muksa machmas miyas, he probably would aser over here as well, because we're afraid that you'll shech the animal. Meaning, if he believes in muksa machmas miyas, he probably believes in muksa machmas iser. Okay, it's a stretch. The Gemara says, "Ditani metaltal ner chadash aval yashan." You're not allowed to you're not allowed to touch a used earthenware lamp because it's disgusting. So if he agrees with the muksa machmas mius that there's a muksa because it's gross, he probably would agree that an animal that you shechted should not be eaten on Shabbos, gezerah, lest you come to shecht animals in the future. So says the Gemara, Emer de Shamler of Yudah muksa machmas miyas. Muksa machmas iser mishamelei. Just because he believes in muksa machmas miyas, how do you know he believes in muksa machmas iser? Meaning, how do you know that he holds that something that's prohibited also becomes muksa? Gemara says in Ditznan Rav Yudah Omer. What with this? Rav Yudah says kol nerishal matechas metaltalin. You're allowed to touch any metal candles that were not lit because metal candles are not gross. Except for an air that was lit when Shabbos began. Why? Because when Shabbos begins and it's lit, Are you allowed to touch it when Shabbos begins? No, because if you touch a candle, you might come to extinguish, whatever. So when Shabbos began, you weren't allowed to touch it because of a gezerah that you might come to do an avera. Then even when it goes out, it still remains muksa for the entire Shabbos, because muksa machmas iser. Says the Gemara. Oh, so to over here, meaning, and I light a candle the same way that it's muksa, because I'm not allowed to touch it, right? I'm not allowed to touch it when Shabbos begins because I lit it, so I can't touch it when Shabbos begins. So therefore, it remains muksa forever. So too, when you shecht an animal, we should aser it, because if we allow you to eat it, you might come to shecht in the future. The Gemara just ends with this: V'dil mashani hasam dehu dachile b'yadayim. I don't know if you can compare the two. The case of the candles, you actively lit it. You actively made it muksa. Over here, Chazal are afraid if you eat it, you'll do it in the future. It's not exactly the same, as opposed to one is more biyadayim and one is more Chazal concerned of your actions. You have to know exactly the chiluk, but the Gemara says so, still unclear. But that's the end of this discussion. All right, we'll stop here. Pick up tomorrow. My pleasure.